Beautiful. Okay, so I know that politics are something a little divisive amongst people. So go ahead, take a hit of the pea stick, and we're gonna talk politics. And as of today, Robert Kennedy Jr. came out. It's August 23rd, and he is in support of Trump. And we've been going back and forth. We've been listening to both sides. Whenever both sides speak, we listen, right? Because our community is not going to be one just to read the headlines. No, we're going to read the headline, read the article, and then make our own opinions, right? And this, granted, was a 2 hour kind of live stream, and I don't want to sit here and go through the live stream. I do appreciate Asman and how he tackles stuff like this, because Asman's he's satirical, right? He's fun, he's funny, he likes to point out the truth in such a way that it almost is like provocative, right? It gets the people going.
But it's provocative.
No, it's not. It's
Gets
gross.
the people going.
It's
No,
disgusting.
that's enough!
But in all seriousness, he points out what deemingly most of the time is the truth, or as he perceives it to be the truth, but in a way that gets people to feel some kind of emotion, whether it's really for him or really against him. But it's unbiased across the board. He does it with everybody. So I find it funny because it makes me feel some things sometimes, and sometimes it makes me laugh. But keeping us from doing a 2 hour stream down to an hour.
I'm sorry to keep everybody waiting. 16 months ago, in April of 2023, I launched my campaign for President of the United States. I began this journey as a Democrat, the party of my father, my uncle, the party which I pledged my own allegiance to long before
I know this
was
is probably
old enough
scripted,
to
but it
vote.
doesn't sound very scripted. It sounds like
I
it's just
attended
from the
my
heart.
first Democratic
He has
convention
some kind of shit
at
happen
the
with
age
his
of
throat.
6 in 1960. And back then, the Democrats were the champions of the Constitution, of civil rights. The Democrats were against authoritarianism,
Is he ill? No, he's not ill.
against censorship, against
throat's
colonialism,
just fucked up.
imperialism, and unjust wars. We were the party of labor, of the
Also, like I'm looking at his chat, and I know he's commenting on it as well. Robert did have a some type of issue. I don't know if it was a cancer, but he had something going on, obviously, with his throat, which gave him the voice that he lives with. And from him being on the Joe Rogan, from what I understand, it doesn't hurt him to talk. This is just how he communicates, and it's a shame because everything else about him is above bar.
working
Like,
class.
I know this is gonna sound a little weird to say, but the dude without his shirt on is jacked, and very much in shape and very healthy. And as somebody who takes his health and fitness very seriously, I respect the fuck out of that.
The Democrats were the party of government transparency and the champion of the environment. Our party was the bulwark against big money interests and corporate power. True to its name, it was the party of democracy. As you know, I left that party in October because it had departed so dramatically from the core values that I grew up with. It had become the party of war, censorship, corruption, big pharma, big tech, big ag, and big money.
I mean, listen to him. This doesn't sound scripted. This sounds like it's from the heart.
To conceal the cognitive decline of the sitting president, I left the party to run as an independent. The mainstream of American politics and journalism derided my decision. Conventional wisdom said that it would be impossible even to get on the ballot as an independent because each state poses an insurmountable tangle of arbitrary rules for collecting signatures. I would need over 1 million signatures, something no presidential candidate in history had ever achieved. And then I'd need a team of attorneys and millions of dollars to handle all the legal challenges from the DNC. The naysayers told us that we were climbing a glass version of Mount Impossible. So the first thing I want to tell you is that we proved them wrong. We did it because beneath the radar of mainstream media organs, we inspired a massive independent political movement. More than 100,000 volunteers sprang into action, hopeful that they could reverse our nation's decline. Many work 10-hour days, sometimes in blizzards and blazing heat. They sacrifice family time, personal commitments, and sleep month after month, energized by a shared vision of a nation healed of its divisions. They set up tables at churches and farmers markets. They canvass door to door. In Utah and in New Hampshire, volunteers collected signatures in snowstorms, convincing each supporter to stop in the frigid cold, take off their gloves, and to sign legibly. During a heat wave in Nevada, I met a tall, athletic volunteer who cheerfully told me that he had lost 25 pounds collecting signatures in 117-degree heat.
I fucking bet that.
To finance this effort, young Americans donated their lunch money, and senior citizens gave up part of their Social Security checks. Our 50-state organization collected those millions of signatures and more. No presidential campaign in American political history has ever done that. And so I want to thank all of those dedicated volunteers and congratulate the campaign staff who coordinated this enormous logistical feat. Your accomplishments were regarded as impossible. You carried me up that glass mountain. You pulled off a miracle. You achieved what all the pundits said.
To me, this is what a leader does. Is he's not taking any of the credit, and he's saying it's all the people.
That, not just for what you did
That's
for
powerful.
my campaign, but for the sacrifices you made because you love our country. You showed everyone that democracy is still possible here. It continues to survive in the press and in the idealistic human energies that still thrive beneath a canvas of neglect and of official and institutional corruption. Today, I'm here to tell you that I will not allow your efforts to go to waste. I'm here to tell you that I will leverage your tremendous accomplishments
And this is where it
to
gets
serve
scripted.
the ideals that we share.
At least that
the ideals
transition
of peace,
felt very.
of prosperity, of freedom, of health, all the ideals that motivated my campaign. I'm here today to describe the path forward that you've opened with your commitment and with your hard labors. Now, in an honest system, I believe that I would have won the election. In a system the kind that my father and my uncles thrived in, a system with open debates, with fair primaries, with regularly scheduled debates, with fair primaries, and with a truly independent media, untainted by
whatever happened to that Trump and Kamala debate?
Yeah.
Whatever
a
happened about
system
that?
of nonpartisan.
Trump and Kamala are supposed to debate in like 12 or like 20-ish days there, Asmund, but for Kennedy, it would have been like, what happened to 3 people being on a stage and going back and forth until it was ultimately down to 2 people. We've never really gotten to hear, and at least I'm not aware of at one point in time there's all 3 on a stage talking about what they were going to do for America.
And courts and election boards, everything would be different. After all, the polls consistently showed me beating each of the other candidates, both in favorability and also in head-to-head matchups. But I'm sorry to say that while democracy may still be alive at the grassroots, it has become little more than a slogan for our political institutions, for our media, and for our government, and most sadly at all for me, the Democratic Party. In the name of saving democracy, the Democratic Party set itself to dismantling it, lacking confidence in its candidate, that its candidate could win in a fair election at the voting booth. The DNC waged continual legal warfare against both President Trump and myself. Each time that our volunteers turned in those towering boxes of signatures needed to get on the ballot, the DNC dragged us into court, state after state, attempting to erase their work and to subvert the will of the voters who had signed those petitions.
I could believe that.
It deployed DNC-aligned judges to throw me and other candidates off the ballot and to throw President Trump in jail. He ran a
That seems
sham
valid.
primary that was rigged to
That
prevent
seems
any
based.
serious challenge to President Biden. Then, when a predictably bungled debate
Oh, that's
performance
true.
precipitated the palace coup against President Biden, the same shadowy DNC operatives appointed his successor, also without an election.
Yep.
They installed a candidate who was so unpopular with voters that she dropped out in 2020.
This is
without
what
winning
people
a single
forget.
delegate.
This is what people forget. I
My
don't
uncle and
understand.
my father
I don't understand.
both
Kamala
won this
ran in
debate.
2020 and
They
dipped because
prided
she was
themselves
so
on their
unpopular.
capacity to go toe to toe with any opponent in the battle over ideas. They would be astonished
can't
to
do
learn
that.
of a Democratic Party presidential nominee who, like Vice President Harris, has not appeared in a single interview or an unscripted encounter with voters for
Unscripted.
35 days.
Called that shit.
This is profoundly undemocratic. How are people to choose
Totally.
when they don't know whom they are choosing?
And this is the biggest issue, is somebody who I would have thought growing up that you would have considered me a Democrat, like, to be honest, like, their whole campaign right now is like, let's win over Trump. It's not about making, I don't want to say making America great, even though I think you should try to make the base human, the most average American, great. Because that, as a rising water, is going to raise all the ships, right? So if we raise the water, we raise the standard of what greatness is, and everyone becomes great. We're just going to keep rising that bar. And instead, we're just trying to beat a dude who we just don't like how he speaks because he sometimes sounds mean.
And how
Granted, when RFK was running, he was my favorite one to run.
can this look to the rest of the world? My father and my
At least
uncle
in
were
this-
always
in this
conscious of
current election
America's
cycle.
image abroad because of our nation's role.
And with Trump getting Tulsi Gabbard, with him on board and getting this guy, I think it is a wonderful group of avengers of what I deem to be true American patriots.
as the template for democracy, the role model for democratic processes, and the leader of the free world. Instead of showing us her substance and character, the DNC and its media organs engineered a surge of popularity for Vice President Harris based
You could just
on
tell
oh,
this dude is in
nothing.
shape. Look at his shoulders.
No
Look at
policies.
his chest.
no interviews,
No Diddy.
no debates, only smoke and mirrors and balloons in a highly produced
Smoke,
Chicago
mirrors, and
circus.
balloons.
There
The Chicago
in
Circus.
Chicago,
God
a
dang, he
string
is
of
just.
You're right about that.
Democratic speakers mentioned Donald
She has
Trump
released policy since then,
147
though,
times
to be fair.
just on the first day. Oh, who needs a policy when you have Trump to hate? In contrast, at the RNC
You're right about that.
convention, President Biden was
That's what a best way of what I was just literally saying of this group right now that's running this Democrat the DNC right now, the Democratic National Committee, whatever they want, whatever it is, the DNC just wants to beat Trump. They don't care about the policies in place. They're just gonna play word salad and just say, hey, word salad, word salad, word salad. Screw this guy, right? And everyone's like, yeah, screw this guy, screw him. He's mean, very mean guy. But then not looking and really breaking down what the word salad is, because they're like, it's a salad, it's healthy, right? Just with the ranch dressing and the cheese, and it's healthy, right?
mentioned only
Yep.
twice in 4 days. I do interviews every day. Many of you have interviewed me. Anybody who asks gets to interview me. Some days I do as many as 10. President Trump, who actually was nominated and won an election, also does interviews daily.
He
How
does
did
live
the Democratic Party
streams.
choose a candidate that has never done an interview or debate
Live streams on Kick,
during
which we're
the
on Kick
entire
right
election
now.
cycle? We know the answer.
Trump did a
They
live
did it
stream
by
on Kick
weaponizing
with
the
Aiden
government
Ross.
agencies. They
That's
did
not.
it by abandoning democracy. They did it by suing the opposition and by disenfranchising American voters. What most alarms me isn't how the Democratic Party conducts its internal affairs or runs its candidates. What alarms me is the resort to censorship and media control. and the weaponization.
Everything
of
he's
federal
saying is
agencies.
based. He's not saying anything
When a
inflammatory.
U.S.
That's why I
president
liked him.
colludes
He
with
just speaks
or
facts.
outright
He's not
coerces
attacking
media companies
people.
to
He's
censor
attacking
political
like the
speech.
ideas
It's an
and
attack on our
everything
most
that
sacred right of free expression, and that's the very right
that.
upon which all of our other constitutional rights rest.
He's right. That's true.
President Biden
Yep.
mocked Vladimir Putin's 88% landslide in the Russian elections, observing that Putin and his party controlled the Russian press and that Putin prevented serious opponents from appearing on the ballot.
88%. So they had to
But
kill
here in
12% of
America,
their population?
the DNC also prevented opponents from appearing on the ballot. And our television networks expose themselves as Democratic Party
They're the ones
organs
that have to go to Ukraine.
over the course of more than a year in a campaign where my poll
That's
numbers
fucked.
reached a time in the high 20s. The DNC aligned
You see what I
mainstream
mean?
media networks.
Instead of Asman's a national
maintained
treasure. We got to
near
keep this guy
perfect
around.
Embargo on interviews.
He's a national treasure.
During his 10-month presidential
He's like
campaign
Nicolas
in
Cage if he was just a
1992,
streamer.
Ross Perot gave 34 interviews
No disrespect
on
to
mainstream
Asman.
networks. In contrast, during the 16
That's a
months
compliment
since
for
I
Nicolas
declared,
Cage to be compared to such
ABC,
greatness.
NBC, CBS, MSNBC, and CNN combined gave only 2 live interviews from me. Those networks instead ran a continuous deluge of hit pieces with inaccurate, often vile, pejoratives and defamatory smears. Some of those same
Well, I would
Instructions.
believe
networks
that.
and colluded with the DNC to keep me off the debate stage.
Yeah,
Representatives of those networks.
I would
are in
imagine
this
that,
room
especially
right
since we
now,
haven't seen him
and I'll
speak
just take
on
a
any
moment
debate
to
stage.
ask you to consider the many ways that your institutions have abdicated this really sacred responsibility, duty of a free press to
They
safeguard
have a
democracy,
responsibility.
to challenge always the
It's
party
just called
in
a
power.
fiduciary responsibility.
Instead of maintaining that posture of fear, skepticism toward authority, your institutions have made themselves government mouthpieces and stenographers for the organs of power. You didn't alone cause the devolution of American democracy, but you could have prevented it. The Democratic Party's censorship of social media
I love that.
was even more
You didn't cause it, but we could have prevented this. And this is we're born with 2 seeds. You have a seed of evil and a seed of good. And every day we have to attend to our plants. And these plants are the seeds of good and the seeds of evil. And the more we tend to thoughts that and actions that aren't good, and we know it is not good, it's not rocket science, and we know it is good. And the more we tend to the plants that are good, we get thriving, good, beautiful area. But the more we thrive to the evil plants, the more dark, cold, and unwelcoming it gets, and we become.
of a naked
And
exercise.
you know
of
you felt
executive
somebody
power.
has that aura that's just
This
like
week, a
so
federal
off-putting you
judge,
can't be
Terry
around them.
Doty, upheld my injunction against President Biden, calling the White House's censorship project, quote, the most egregious violation of the First Amendment in the history of the United States of America.
So far.
Doty's previous 155-page decision details
Good
how
clarification.
just 37 hours after he took the oath of office,
We can do better.
swearing to uphold the Constitution, President Biden and his White House opened up a portal and then invited the CIA, the FBI, CISA, which is a censorship agency, it's the center of the censorship industrial complex, DHS, the IRS, and other agencies to censor me and other political dissidents on social media.
What a surprise.
Even today,
And we know about
users who
this.
try to
And
post
yet
my
they
campaign
feel like
videos
they're the
to
party
Facebook
of
or
the
YouTube
people?
and messages
I
and
don't-
this content.
When did this happen? When did the party of the people become not about the people? It's about the other people now, not about the people that are here. It's about the people that are not here so they can get here.
LA's community standard. 2 days after Judge Doty rendered his decision this week, Facebook was still attaching warning labels to an online petition calling on ABC to include me in the upcoming debate. They said that violates community standards, their community standards. The mainstream
Seems like that's
media
not true.
was once the guardian of the First Amendment
I
and
don't know with
democratic
YouTube. At
principles,
least that's the first one I see.
and it's joined this systemic attack on democracy.
He said YouTube and Facebook.
It also, the media
Thank you,
justifies their
Asman, for doing
censorship
that.
on the grounds of combating
I was stretching.
misinformation. But governments and oppressors don't censor lies. They don't fear lies. They fear the truth.
That's
and
a
that's
good-
what
that's
they
a good one.
censor.
That's a very good.
And,
That's a good one.
I don't want any of this.
That
to
is a
sound like
good.
personal
That's a good thing to
complaint,
leverage
because
on.
It's not.
Well, it
I-
is, but he's right.
For me, it's all part of a journey, and it's a journey that I signed up with. But I need to make these
Or signed up
observations
for, but yeah, I'm
because
picking up what you're putting
I
down.
think they're critical for us doing the thing that we need to do as citizens in a democracy to assess where we are in this country and what our democracy still looks like, and the assumptions about U.S. leadership around the globe. And are we living up? Are we really still a role model for democracy in this country, or have we made it, a kind of a joke? And here's the good news: while mainstream outlets denied me a critical platform, they didn't shut down my ideas, which have especially flourished among young voters and independent voters, thanks to the alternative media. Many months ago, I promised the American people that I would withdraw from the race if I became a spoiler. A spoiler is someone who will alter the outcome of the election but has no chance of winning. In my heart, I no longer believe that I have a realistic path to electoral victory in the face of this relentless
Yeah, I would
systematic
expect.
censorship
Everybody knows that.
and media control.
Yeah.
It's not. It's
So I
not
cannot, in
that's
good
not the reason.
conscience, ask my staff and volunteers to keep working their long hours, or ask my donors to keep giving, when I cannot honestly tell them that
Yeah, he
I
didn't have a
have a
chance.
real
He didn't.
path
No.
to the White House. Furthermore, our polling consistently showed
I mean, he'd had a chance. It was just
that by staying
unrealistic.
on the ballot in the battleground states, I would likely
Non-probable.
hand the election over to the Democrats, with whom I disagree on the most existential issues: censorship, war, and chronic disease. Oh, I want everyone to know that I am not terminating my campaign. I
Okay.
am simply suspending it and not ending it. My name,
Okay, so
my
what are we
name will
doing?
remain on the ballot in most states. If you live in a blue state, you can vote for me without harming or helping President Trump or Vice President Harris. In red states, the same will apply. I
Huh?
encourage you to vote for me.
Huh?
And if enough of you do vote for me, and neither of the major party candidates win 270 votes, which is quite possible. In fact, today our polling shows them tying at 269 to 269.
Wait, is he really
And
gonna?
I could conceivably still end up in the White House in a contingent election. But
I love it.
in
Oh,
about 10
man.
battleground states,
This is
where my
cinema.
presence
All
Yeah,
right.
I don't. I can't
I'm
believe
gonna
this is
remove my
where
name.
this is actually gonna go.
I've already started that process and urge voters not to vote for me.
But
Oh,
you just
man.
urged them
Sense
to
of
vote for
victory
you.
and not defeat, that I'm suspending
Who's the people clapping?
my
The one in the
campaign
media.
activities. Not only did we do the impossible by collecting 1 million
The
signatures,
nuclear option.
we changed the national political conversation forever. Chronic disease, free speech, government corruption, breaking our addiction to war have moved to the center of politics.
I think it
I
really
can
is
say
just trying to
all
take
who
votes
worked
away
so
from
hard
Kamala and just give everything to
in the
Trump.
last year and a
That's what this
half.
feels like.
Thank you for a job well done. Three great causes drove me to enter this race in the first place, primarily.
So why drop
And these are
out?
the
Why?
principal
I'm still
causes that
confused on that
persuaded me
statement
to
still.
leave
I'm
the
dropping out, but I'm not
Democratic
dropping out.
Party
I'm just suspending.
and run as an independent. And now to throw my support to President Trump. The causes were free speech, a war in Ukraine, and the war on our children. I've already described some of my personal experiences and
okay.
struggles with the government's censorship industrial complex. I want to say a word about the Ukraine war.
Okay.
The military-industrial complex has provided us with a familiar
I wish this guy had a
comic
better
book
voice because
justification like they do
his
on
voice
every
is the only
war,
thing holding him back, which
that
is
this
so
one is a
unfortunate.
noble effort to stop a supervillain, Vladimir Putin,
Yep.
from invading the Ukraine and then to thwart his Hitler-like march across Europe. In fact, tiny Ukraine is a proxy in a geopolitical struggle initiated by the ambitions of the U.S. neocons or American global hegemony.
He's not totally
I'm not
wrong,
excusing
even though I
Putin for
support
invading
Ukraine.
Ukraine. He had other options.
Yeah.
But the Russia is war.
I don't know
the
enough
war
to
is Russia's
say
predictable
right or
route
wrong.
Talk about Israel.
to the reckless neocon
Yeah,
project of
yeah.
extending NATO to encircle Russia.
The
A
Ukraine-Israel
hostile
thing to me is more
The credulous media
important
rarely
to
explain to
humanity as a
Americans
whole
that we
than
unilaterally
Russia-Ukraine.
walked away from two
Hot topic,
intermediate nuclear
but it's
weapons
just my.
treaties
I
with
don't know
Russia,
enough about Russia-Ukraine.
and then put nuclear-ready Aegis missile systems in Romania and Poland. This is a hostile act. And that the Biden White House repeatedly spurned Russia's offer to settle this war peacefully. The Ukraine war began in 2014 when U.S. agencies overthrew the democratically elected government of Ukraine
Nope.
and installed a hand-picked pro-Western government that launched a deadly civil war against ethnic Russians in Ukraine. In 2019,
I don't know how
America
true
walked
this
away
is.
from a peace treaty, the Minsk Agreement, that had been negotiated between Russia and Ukraine by European nations. And then in April of 2022, we wanted the war. In April of 2022, President Biden
All I
sent
really know
Boris
is,
Johnson
like,
to Ukraine to
Russia and
force
Ukraine,
President
neither
Zelensky
one of
to
them are
tear up a
saints.
peace agreement
Neither
that
one of
he
them are
and the
saints
Russians
in
had
like
already signed, and the
2018,
Russians were
2015,
withdrawing
2016.
troops
Ukraine was just as corrupt,
from
if not more
Kiev and
corrupt
Donbass
than
and
Russia.
Luhansk.
So I
And
don't know
that peace
what to
agreement would
truly
have
believe
brought
out of that
peace
section
to
of
the
the world.
region
I've never
and
been
would
there.
allow Donbass and Lugansk to remain part of Ukraine. President Biden stated that month that his objective in the war was regime change in Russia. His Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin
Asman looks
simultaneously
confused, so I'm
explained that
sure
America's purpose in the war
his information is
was to
contradicting
exhaust
this.
the Russian army, to degrade its capacity to fight anywhere else in the world. These objectives, of course, have nothing to do with what they were telling Americans about protecting Ukraine's sovereignty. Ukraine is a victim in this war, and it's a victim of
Okay.
the West. Since
That
then, of Russia,
the
and
victim
both
of the
Russia
West,
and
I
the
can
West.
understand.
Since then, we have, since tearing up that agreement, forcing Zelensky.
I know America is in the
Man.
West, but I don't know if America
We've
is the
squandered
West. I think the West is
flower
like
of
this
Ukrainian
DEI
youth, as many as
mind
600,000
virus
Ukrainian kids
that's just taken over.
and over 100,000
Starting in the
Russian
West.
kids, all of whom we
This
should
take
be
is pretty wild.
mourning,
Bro,
have died,
he's going
and
in.
the Ukraine's infrastructure is destroyed. The war has been a disaster for our country as well. We squandered nearly
Yeah, he
$200
laying it
billion
out, yeah.
already, and these are badly needed.
This is why I
dollars
want to
in
hear
our
this stuff.
communities,
We
suffering
talk about
communities
like
all-
politicians not knowing, Americans, but I really don't feel like Americans know any of these politicians and what they're saying. So I want to, whenever these people are speaking and they're going to be in charge of our free world, I want to hear at least what they say. At the end of the day, I can't control who wins, and quite frankly, I don't care who wins, because I'm just gonna keep working on what I can work on, which is the things in my immediate life, and personal sovereignty, and I want to make sure that I can tend to all of these things the best that I possibly can.
over our country. The Nord Stream pipeline sabotage and the sanctions have destroyed Europe's industrial base, which formed the bulwark of U.S. national security. A
Also,
strong Germany
take
with
note of this
strong
chat.
industry is
It started
much,
out
much
with this guy is
stronger
like
deterrent to
retarded
Russia,
to this is the
and a Germany
type of
that
guy we
that
need.
is deindustrialized and turned into just an extension of U.S. military base.
Still some ignorant
We've
people
pushed
talking about
Russia
like
into a
his voice.
disastrous alliance with China and Iran. We're closer to the brink of nuclear exchange than at any time since 1962. And the neocons
That
and
was
the
a
White
Cuban
House
Missile
don't
Crisis.
seem to care at all. Our moral authority and our economy are in shambles, And the war gave rise to the emergence of BRICS, which now threatens to replace the dollar as the global reserve currency. This is a first-class calamity for our country. Judging by her bellicose, belligerent speech last night in Chicago, we can assume that President Harris will be an enthusiastic advocate for this and other neocon military adventures. And President Trump says that he will reopen negotiations with President Putin and end the war overnight as soon as he becomes president. This alone would justify my support for his campaign. Last summer, it looked
Yeah,
like
no, I'm in the same
candidate
boat.
was
It's like, it's just, all right. All right, he'll end it day one. Got it. Heard.
willing to negotiate a quick end to the Ukraine war. To
It doesn't
tackle
seem like that's
chronic disease
negotiation. That's
epidemic,
just straight up
protect
bullying.
free
At that
speech,
point, did one day.
our constitutional freedoms, to clean corporate influence out of our government, or to defy the neocons and their agenda of endless military adventurism. But now one of the two candidates has adopted these issues as his own, to the point where he has asked to enlist me in his administration.
Trump.
I'm
Yeah.
speaking, of course, of Donald Trump.
Yep.
Less than 2 hours after President Trump narrowly escaped assassination, Callie Means called me on my cell phone. I was then in Las Vegas. Callie is arguably the leading advocate for food safety, for soil regeneration, and for ending the chronic disease epidemic that is destroying America's health and ruining our economy. Callie has exposed the insidious corruption at the FDA, the NIH, the HHS, and the USDA that has caused the epidemic. Callie had been working on and off for my campaign, advising me on those subjects since the beginning. And those subjects have been my primary focus for the last 20 years. I was delighted when Callie told me that day that he had also been advising President Trump. He told me President Trump was anxious to talk to me about chronic disease and other subjects, and to explore avenues of cooperation. He asked if I would take a call from the president. President Trump telephoned me a few minutes later, and I met with him the following day. A few weeks later,
The
I
day
met
after he
again
got
with
shot?
President Trump and his family members and
Jesus.
close advisors in Florida. In a series of long, intense discussions, I was surprised to discover that we are aligned on many key issues. In those meetings, he suggested that we join forces as a unity party. We talked about Abraham Lincoln's team of rivals. That arrangement would allow
The
us
Avengers?
to disagree.
That's
publicly
basically
and
what he's saying,
privately
yeah.
Oh,
and
boy.
I said that
fiercely
earlier. Him, Tulsi Gabbard, this whole crew, it seems like they're trying to assemble the Avengers.
need be on issues over which we differ, while working together on the existential issues.
Oh, my
upon
God.
which
Are you
we
telling
are
me
in
Donald
concordance.
Trump is Captain
I
America
was
and he's
a
recruiting
ferocious critic
Robert Downey Jr.? I mean,
of many
Robert
of the
Kennedy Jr. right now?
policies, during his first administration, and there are still issues and approaches upon which we continue to have very serious differences. We are aligned with each other on other key issues, like ending the forever wars.
That's important
ending
to
the
say.
childhood
We may
disease
not
epidemics,
agree
securing
on
the border,
everything, but we do agree
protecting
on some
freedom of
things, and that's what we're
speech,
going to focus on.
unraveling the corporate
That's cool.
capture of our regulatory
Everyone, we all
agencies,
have our things that we disagree on,
getting
but most
the
people
US
don't,
intelligence
or at least
agencies out
forget
of the business
to
of
focus
propagandizing and
on the things that
censoring
you
and
do agree on,
surveilling Americans
and meet on common ground with
and
respect
interfering
with
our
one another with
elections.
that.
Following my first discussion with President Trump, I tried unsuccessfully to open similar discussions with Vice President Harris. Vice President Harris declined to meet or even to speak with me.
Oh,
Suspending my candidacy is a heart-rending decision for me, but I'm convinced that it's the best hope for ending the Ukraine
He's nervous
war,
grabbing
ending
that
the
ring.
chronic
It's
disease
like normally a
epidemic that is
a
eroding
sign
our
like of
nation's
nervousness.
vitality from the inside, and for finally protecting free speech. I feel a moral
Which I'm sure being on a
obligation to
stage doing
use
what he's
this
doing, that's
opportunity
nerve-wracking.
to save millions of American children, above all things. In case some of you don't realize how dire the condition is of our children's health and chronic disease in general, I would urge you to view Dr. Carlson's recent interview with Callie Means
Well, that's
and
gonna
his
get people
sister,
mad.
Dr. Casey Means,
Yep.
who is the top
Just
graduate
because he said
of her
Tucker
class
Carlson.
at Stanford Medical School.
Yeah.
This is
People
an
are
issue
gonna.
that affects all of us far more directly and urgently than any culture war issue and all the other issues that we obsess on and that are tearing apart our country. This is the most important issue. Therefore, it has the potential to bring us together. So let me share a little bit about why I believe it's so urgent. Today, 2/3, we spend more on healthcare than any country on earth, twice what they pay in Europe. And yet we have the worst health outcomes of any nation in the world. We're about
This is where I
79th in
really like RFK.
What could be
health
the reason
outcomes
for that?
behind
I
Costa Rica,
really,
Nicaragua,
really
Mongolia, and
like
other
what he has to
countries.
say about this
Mongolia.
stuff.
Nobody has a chronic disease burden like we have. And
What
during
could be the
the
reason?
COVID epidemic, we had the highest body count of any country in the world. We
The
had 16%
money.
of the COVID deaths, and we only have 4.2% of the world's population. And CDC says that's
Give me
because
the
we are the sickest people on
money.
earth. We have the highest chronic disease rate on earth. And the average
We
American
in a
who
hog
died
nation.
That's
from
why.
COVID had
That's right.
3.8 chronic diseases. So these were people who had immune system collapse, who had mitochondrial dysfunction. And no other country has anything like this.
Hamburger
2/3 of
Americans.
American adults and children suffer from chronic health issues. 50 years ago, that number was less than 1%. So we've gone from 1% to 66%.
I'm
In
telling
America,
you, if this guy took off
74% of
his
Americans are now
top
overweight
and just
or
had his
obese.
pants on, he looks better than
50% of our children.
most
120
people
years
watching
ago,
this video.
when somebody was obese,
Here we go.
You look better than
they
me.
were sent to
Low
the
key.
circus. There were case reports done about them. Obesity was almost unknown. In Japan, childhood obesity rate is 3% compared to 50% here.
Oh shit!
Half of Americans have pre-diabetes or type 2 diabetes. When my uncle was president, I was a boy. Juvenile diabetes
God.
was effectively non-existent. A
This is
typical
him.
pediatrician
This is the
would
guy.
see
Like,
one
that's
case
the
of
politician.
diabetes during his
That's
entire
fantastic.
career,
I
40 or
love
50
seeing
year
that.
career. Today, 1 out of every 3 kids who walks through his office door is diabetic or pre-diabetic, and the mitochondrial disorder that caused diabetes also causing Alzheimer's, which is now classified as diabetes. And it's costing this country
new,
more than
right?
our
Yeah,
military
that's pretty
budget
new.
every year. There's been an explosion
Alzheimer's being
of
diabetes?
neurological illnesses that
I think
I never
neurological
saw
has
as
to
a kid.
do
ADD,
more about
ADHD,
psilocybin
Yeah, no, it's
And-
super new. I think that's like last
Gut.
like 3 months.
narcolepsy, ASD, Asperger's, autism.
As somebody who's been involved in like health and fitness for most of my life, this topic has been circling around like the fitness and health community, but now is actually gained traction in the actual scientific and medical community that Alzheimer's may be led more about the gut and neurological decline, which can be involved in the gut, but I'm also curious to see about the psychedelic front of that, because we've seen with psilocybin being able to reset and refire neurons that were once alive then kind of dead, now being able to be turned back on again. Very fascinating.
In the year 2000, the autism rate was 1 in 1,500. Now, autism rates in kids are 1 in 36, according to CDC
No,
nationally.
it's one in
Nobody's talking
3.
about this. 1 in every
Yeah.
22 kids in California has autism.
No,
And
it's higher.
This is a crisis
Yeah.
that 77% of our kids are too disabled to serve in the United States military.
Yeah.
What is happening to our country? And why isn't
Yeah.
this in the headlines every single day?
He's
There's
cooking,
nobody
man.
else in the world that is
Hold on.
experiencing this.
Stop.
This is
cooking.
only
Let him
happening in
let him cook.
Oh
about
man.
18%. And by the way,
Oh my God, this
No,
is fire.
there has been no change.
This is why
in
you couldn't let
diagnosis
him
in
on
the
a
industry,
debate stage.
sometimes like to say.
Legitimately.
There has been no change in screening. This is a change in incidence. In my generation, 70-year-old men, uh, it, the autism rates are about 1 in 10,000. In my kids' generation, 1 in 34. I'll repeat, in California, 1 in 22. Why are we letting this happen? Why are we allowing this to happen to our children?
No more social
These are the
media.
most
Let's
precious
go. It's
assets
not
that
social
we have
media.
in
It's
this
not.
country.
Social media is net
How
positive.
can we let this happen?
California, bro.
About 18%
What is going on in
of American
California?
teens now have fatty liver disease. That's like 1 out of every 5. That disease, when I was a kid, only affected late-stage alcoholics who were elderly. Cancer rates are skyrocketing in the young and the old. Young adult cancers are up 79%. 1 in 4 American women is on antidepressant medication. 40% of
I know
teens
some.
Yeah.
have a mental health
I'm
diagnosis.
sure we all do.
And 15% of high schoolers are on Adderall, and 500,000 children on SSRIs.
What percentage
Yep.
of streamers are
So
on
what's
Adderall?
causing this suffering?
50.
I'll name 2 culprits. First, and the
Social
worst,
media.
is ultra-processed food. About
I
70% of American children's diet is ultra-processed. That means industrial manufactured in a factory. These foods consist primarily
I
of processed sugar,
love
ultra-processed
this.
grains, and seed oils. Laboratory scientists who many of whom formerly worked for the cigarette industry, which purchased all the big food companies in the 1970s and 80s, deployed thousands of scientists to figure out new chemicals to make the food more addictive. And these ingredients
MSG and
didn't
shit.
exist 100 years ago.
Not just
Humans aren't
MSG, but like
biologically
actual like
adapted
different
to
levels
eat
of
them.
sugar and shit like that.
Hundreds of these chemicals are now banned in Europe, but ubiquitous
He's
in American
No, he's right
processed
about
foods.
this.
No,
Yeah,
100%.
you're right.
The second culprit is toxic chemicals in our food, our medicine,
Yeah.
in our environment.
I had no idea about this until like 2 years ago.
Pesticides, food
And people are gonna get mad at him for his voice and everything that the health that he's had in his past, but his past is exactly what he's talking about, and he's a victim of this, and he literally is. It was a lawyer. He was an environmentalist hippie who became a lawyer to sue these big companies to clean up the environment. Like, this is who you want for like climate activists, and he's the one who's had to firsthand deal with a lot of the shit that he's talking about at the moment, and he's trying to do something about it. What more of a could you ask for from an American patriot who says, "Hey, I don't like this, so I'm going out and I'm speaking about this," and trying to lay out facts. I respect the hell out of this guy.
additives.
I also saw MSG is harmless. It's sure in low doses, but large doses every day, compounded over weeks, months, years, decades. That's when it starts to become dangerous, and that's what we've seen over generation and generation and generational slip.
Pharmaceutical drugs and toxic waste permeate every cell of our bodies. The assault on our children's cells and hormones is unrelenting. To name just one problem, many of these chemicals increase estrogen. Because young children are ingesting so many of these hormone disruptors,
Oh
America's
shit.
puberty rate is now occurring at age 10 to 13, which is 6 years earlier than girls were reaching puberty in 1900.
Oh man.
Our country has
He's
the
going
earliest
there.
puberty rates of any continent on the earth. And no, this isn't because of better nutrition. This is not normal. Breast cancer is also estrogen driven, and it now strikes 1 in 8 women. We are mass
Soy
poisoning
boys.
all of our children and
Wait,
our adults.
did I
See,
miss
food
Soy
volume,
Boys?
he got teleprompter.
Considering the grievous human cause of this tragic epidemic
miss
of
something
chronic
solid?
disease, it seems
If
almost
he
crass
freeballed
to
this,
mention
that'd
the
be
damage
nuts.
it does to our economy. But I'll
Imagine
say
raw dogging
it is
this.
crippling the nation's finances.
I raw
When my
dog
uncle was
every
president,
night,
our
you know what I'm
country
saying?
spent $0 on chronic disease. Today, government healthcare spending is
The
almost
US
all
is
for
making
chronic
femboys.
disease. And it's double the military budget. And it is the fastest growing budget item in the federal budget. And chronic disease costs more to the economy as a whole, costs at least $4 trillion, 5 times our military budget. And that's a 20% drag on everything we do and everything we aspire to. Poor and minority communities suffer disproportionately. People who worry about DEI or about bigotry of any kind, this dwarfs anything. We are poisoning the poor. We are systematically poisoning
You're right.
minorities across this country.
This
This is
right.
actually
Lobbyists
insane.
have made sure that most of the food stamp lunch program, about
Don't worry about
70%
DEI.
of
We're
food
killing them.
stamps and 70 or 77% of school lunches are processed foods.
Bro, these
There's no
bullet points are
vegetables.
crazy.
There's nothing that you would want to eat. We are just poisoning the poor citizens, and that's why they have the highest chronic disease
Oh my God.
burden of anybody, any demographic in our country, and the highest in the world. The same food industry lobbied to make sure that nearly all agricultural subsidies
I didn't expect this to go
go to
so hard.
commodity crops that are the feedstock of processed food industry.
This is insane.
These policies are
And I'm just saying this right now. I love this blue backdrop, the American flags on the other side. I know it's pretty standard, but just this RFK, dude, this is fantastic. For some odd reason, you get to see this, brother. You did a fantastic job on this. You, as my new generational friends would say, have cooked.
destroying small farms, and they're destroying our soils. We give about, I think, 8 times as much in subsidies to tobacco and we do to fruits and vegetables.
What?
It makes no sense.
What?
If we want a healthy country.
Hold
The
up.
good news is that we can change all this. We can change it very, very quickly. America can get healthy again. To do that, we need to do 3 things.
The
First,
exercise.
we need to root out the corruption in our health agencies. Second, we need to change incentives in our healthcare system. And third, we need to inspire Americans to get healthy again. 80% of NIH grants go
This
to
is literally what I've been saying. If you look at like America as a fucking athlete, like the government as like as a body, right? At one point in time, the United States government was a strong, wily, scrappy, world-renowned athlete, and now has slipped its discipline, its intensity, and its consistency, and has applied that elsewhere, and now it has become bloated and fat and messy. And if we once more get in shape, we raise the level of greatness as a base level amongst everybody and not focus on the bottom 10%, but allow the top 10% to inspire the rest of the 80% of the population to be better, we can be great.
people who have conflicts of interest. These are the people, virtually everybody who sits, Joe Biden just appointed a new panel to NIH to decide the food recommendations. And they're all people who are from the industry. They're all people who are from the processed food companies. They're deciding what Americans, here is healthy. And 74% of Americans are obese. The cost, if all of them took their Ozempic prescription, is
He called out
$3
Ozempic.
a year.
$3
This
trillion.
is a drug that is made by Novo Nordisk, the biggest company in Europe. It's a Danish company, and the Danish government does not recommend it. It recommends change in diet to treat obesity and exercise.
That's a good one.
And in our country, the recommendation now is for Ozempic to children at age 6.
That's
Jesus
oh man, that's
Novo Nordisk
Christ.
is the biggest company in Europe, and virtually its entire value
Jesus.
is based upon its projections of what it's going to sell,
Wow.
the Ozempic it's going to sell to America. And we have the food lobbyists have a bill in front of Congress today that is backed by the White House, backed by Vice President Harris and President Biden, to allow this.
He's gonna be
to happen. This
assassinated for sure.
$3 trillion cost that is going to.
I hope
bankrupt our
not. This
country.
guy is speaking such facts. This guy's
For
literally
a
cooking in the
fraction of
kitchen
that
right
amount,
now.
We
He's
could buy
just
organic food for every American family, 3
whipping
meals
it
a
up.
day, and
Just-
eliminate diabetes altogether. We're going to bring healthy food back to school lunches.
Let's go.
We're going to stop subsidizing the worst foods with our agricultural subsidies.
Like that.
We're going to get toxic chemicals out of our food. We're going to reform the entire food system.
Yeah, you need
And for
farmers
that,
to be
we
able to
need
make
new
money.
leadership in Washington.
True.
Because
We're not getting
unfortunately,
rid
both
of
the Democrats and the
soda, though,
Republican
right?
parties are in cahoots with the big food producers.
I would if I ever get to meet Asman, I swear you guys could bet me, hold me accountable on this. I'm gonna find one of the Zevias, the Coke Zevias, or the Dr Peppers. I'll figure out which one he likes more, and just say try it. Just try it, because the Zevia Coke and the Zevia Dr Pepper, low key, oh, they're great. Also, grape tastes like the Fanta, fantastic, and then there's like a lime one, basically like a Sprite. It's fantastic.
Big Pharma
Keep
and
soda.
Big Ag, which are among the
Please,
DNC's
please
major
keep soda.
Vice President Harris has expressed no interest in addressing this issue. 4 more years of Democratic rule will complete the consolidation of corporate and neocon power,
Nope.
and our children will be the ones who suffer most. I got involved with chronic disease 20 years ago, not because I chose to or wanted to. It was essentially thrust upon me.
Listen to this.
It was an issue that should have been central to the environmental movement. I was a central leader at that time, but it was widely ignored by all the institutions,
Environmental.
including
This was
the
like
NGOs who
original
should have been
climate guy.
protecting our kids against toxins. It was an orphan issue, and I had a weakness for orphans. I watched generations of children get sicker and sicker. I had 11 siblings, and I had 7 kids myself.
Jesus.
I was
Christ.
conscious of what was happening in their classrooms.
Homie got
and their
around.
friends, and I watched these sick kids, these damaged
These
kids.
fat kids.
On that generation, almost all of them are damaged. And nobody in power seemed to care or to even notice. For 19 years, I prayed every morning that God would put me in a position to end this calamity. The chronic disease crisis was one of the primary reasons for my running for president, along with ending censorship in the Ukraine war. It's the reason I've made the heart-wrenching decision to suspend my campaign and to support President Trump. This decision is agonizing for me because of the
Damn.
difficulties it causes
There it
said it.
is.
my wife and my children and my friends.
But
But I,
once more, we know the president can't do it all by himself. So and this is me just smoking some hopium right now for sure. But it's seemingly Trump is getting the Avengers with RFK and Tulsi Gabbard. If you guys don't know who Tulsi is, I am a huge Tulsi fan. In fact, if I had a magic wand and I can have a president and a VP, it'd be Jocko Willink and Tulsi Gabbard. I don't care what order. You can have Tulsi as president and Jocko as VP or vice versa. I just think they represent extreme leadership. And the fact that they're on board with Trump and now RFK is there, who I also deem as a true American patriot who shows exemplary leadership. I think we're basically getting the Avengers, but in politics.
I have the certainty that this is what I've meant to do. And that certainty gives me internal peace, even in storms. If I'm given the chance to fix the chronic disease crisis and reform our food production, I promise that within 2 years, we will watch chronic disease burden lift dramatically. We will make Americans healthy again. Within 4 years, America will be a healthy country. We will be stronger,
No more
more
fat
resilient,
people.
more optimistic, and
Fucking
happier.
get rid of them.
I won't fail in doing this.
Done.
Ultimately, the future, however it happens, is in God's hands and in the hands of the American voters and those of President Trump. If President Trump is elected and honors his word, the vast burden of chronic disease that now demoralizes and bankrupts the country will disappear. This is a spiritual journey for me.
Honors his
I
word.
reached my decision through deep prayer, through hard-nosed logic, and I asked myself, what choices must I make to maximize my chances to save America's children and restore national health? I felt that if I refused this opportunity, I would not be able to look myself in the mirror, knowing that I could have saved lives of countless children and reversed this country's chronic disease epidemic. I'm 70 years old. I may have a decade to be effective. I can't imagine that President Harris would allow me or anyone to solve these dire problems. After
70
8
years
years
old.
of President Harris,
70 years old.
any opportunity for
70.
me to fix the problem will be out of my reach forever. President Trump has told me that he wants this to be his legacy. I'm choosing to believe that this time he will follow through. His son, his biggest donors, his closest friends, and all support this objective. My joining the Trump campaign will be a difficult sacrifice for my wife and children, but worthwhile if there's even a small chance of saving these kids. Ultimately, the only thing that will save our country and our children is if we choose to love our kids more than we hate each other. That's why I launched my campaign to unify
He
America.
wanted to. I bet the script says like we have to get Trump in there, but
I
want to say that he did that
That's a
like
good
off
one.
the
not
lip,
so
but that's
much
good.
because of
Don't
any
He's had
focus
some
on the
really
hate.
good ones on
policies
this.
they promoted, but because
Yes.
they
He
were
has.
able to
Focus on loving the kids more than hating
inspire
each other.
profound
Like
love for
that's
our country and to fortify
Beautifully
our
said.
sense of ourselves as a national community held together by ideals. They were able to put their love into the intentions and hearts of ordinary Americans and to unify a national populist movement of Americans, blacks and whites, Hispanics, urban and rural Americans. They inspired affection and love and high hopes and a culture of kindness that continue to radiate among Americans from their memory. That's the spirit on which I ran my campaign and that I intend to bring into the campaign of President Trump. Instead of vitriol and polarization, I will appeal to the values that unite us, the goals that we could achieve if only we weren't at each other's throats. The most unifying
God
theme for
damn,
all
is that not
Americans
true?
is that we all love our children. If
Yeah.
we all unite around that issue now,
Didn't we just talk about how they
we
were
can
all fat
finally
though?
give them the protection, the health, and the future that they deserve. Thank you all very much.
That was a hell of a speech. We'll listen to the rest of that, but man, I am such a proponent of so many different things that he was saying, and if I'm going to speak openly to you guys, when it comes to election time, this guy was going to be the guy I was going to actually vote for. Even though I've been open on like how impressed I've been with Trump and his campaign was going on and having a 3-hour interview with Aiden Ross and just speaking openly, it made me have a completely different viewpoint on him. But RFK is somebody who I've listened to pretty consistently. He was on Joe Rogan, how I first picked up on him, wrote a book. I got the audiobook and just listened and just kind of been listening to what this guy has to say and his character. And I was picking up a lot of the things that he's putting down, especially when it comes to primarily around the idea of like health and fitness and redoing the agriculture, the farm system. But that's like his specialty. That's his world. And if there's anybody who's going to be in charge of that, I would want it to be that guy. So if, in this world of Avengers, hopefully he could fix that problem. But let's finish out the rest of the video.
Man, so let's go ahead. Let's summarize. RFK. Let's see. No more wars. Put fat people back in circuses.
6-year-olds
Should not be on Ozempic. I mean, I feel like these are some pretty strong points. I do. I think he's really.
I think he's cooking. I think he's cooking with this. No, I agree, as it. It's